I'm gonna say the process that I went through with vetting women when I was single, if you would call it vetting, but I wasn't trying to get in a relationship, so it wasn't necessarily vetting, but the criteria I had for the type of woman that I wanted. In a previous video, maybe about giving relationship advice, I said something that struck a conversation with somebody I know, because I had said I would X out a woman quick if she didn't meet the criteria that I had set in place. And they was asking me, what did I mean by that, so on and so forth. So I'll give a few examples to, and it's not that everybody should conduct themselves this way. A lot of stuff that people give advice on is subjective. So find your non-negotiables or whatever the case may be that fit you, because it may be different from mine. I'm just giving my personal experience, how I operated. But if a woman would deal with a certain type of man, if he wasn't the caliber of man that I was, that told me I don't need to fool with that woman. That's part of how I would know, like, if those are the type of dudes you're into, I want nothing to do with you. That was one thing. The biggest thing that ruled a lot of women out for me is that once I started to grow spiritually and my outlook on life started to change, I started getting a better understanding of things. So spirituality became the number one thing. Like, if it wasn't a spiritual connection, there was not going to be that type of relationship. Like I said, I could be friends with damn near any woman, but as far as relationship, I wasn't going to look at a woman in that sense if there was not a spiritual connection. And I'm not talking about religion. For me personally, it's two different things. So I operate differently from that standpoint. So if we didn't connect on the spiritual level, it wasn't no way in hell that we was getting together. I have a lot of female friends, great women. I know people get offended by female women and so on and so forth. That's just how I talked when I was coming up. But I have a lot of friends that are women, great women, hands down, would make perfect wives or people to be in relationships with, so on and so forth. But being that it didn't just take you being the perfect woman to be with because you have great qualities about you, so on and so forth, I didn't care about that. And unfortunately, I lost a lot of my friends, a lot of my women friends behind it, because they realized that what I told them at the beginning of me not wanting a relationship, they realized how much I was sticking to that. And some of them wanted more from me, and so they went on their way, and I can't even, I can't fault them for it. I wasn't going to be able to give them what they wanted. But I'm saying all that to say, for me personally, it was easy to rule people out just based on that one criteria alone, the spiritual connection. Then the thing that I mentioned about, if a woman was into a certain type of dude and he wasn't on my caliber, and I don't mean like he got to be just like me, but if he acted a certain type of way, or, did certain things or whatever the case is that I didn't do, it would rule you out. As opposed to if it was a dude that, carried himself a certain type of way, had some respect about himself, so on and so forth, that's a little bit different, because I'm looking at you, all right, if that's the type of man that you're into, the people you into is a reflection of who you are. So that's how I looked at it. So that's what I meant by that part that I said in that video. Something else that, now I think of it, it ain't too much. See, for me, it was so easy to rule people out just based on the spiritual aspect alone, that I didn't have to have all these different things that you had to fit on my list. I didn't have a list. It was just strictly, there's no spiritual connection, there's not going to be a relationship. Hence me being single for, at that time, probably about 10 to 11 years. So my vetting was a lot different than the norm. A lot of people, men especially, don't have a criteria necessarily. So I don't know what to say to that. For the men that are looking for good women, trust me, they out there. But you have to make sure you doing your part to exemplify that type of behavior. You can't be looking for a good woman, but yet and still you out here entertaining everything else that's not a good woman. Because here you are now playing into that cycle of the issues that we have within our community. So it's one thing to say you want a good woman, but it's another thing if you out here dogging women and doing all type of stuff in regards to women, but yet and still you sitting up here saying you want a good woman. Well, the chances of you running into a good woman, if you constantly dogging each woman that you're running into, and now that plays into her behavior and how she now changes. She could have been a good woman, but now she's run into so many men that have dogged her out that she starts to change how she operates, and that's why I think a lot of the problems are happening. But that was just my little quick advice as far as my personal experience, how I vetted. I know it's probably not gonna be that helpful, but like I said, somebody brought that up to me, like, hey, what did you mean by this? Can you give context? So I wanted to come back and give my personal experience on how I used to vet. Appreciate y'all for watching. Subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff. Appreciate y'all.